Now it's time for Fun Science with Chemical Cress, a chance for you all to use things in your home, to have fun and learn a little bit more about science. Now over to Chemical Cress.
Hello everyone, my name is Chemical Cress and today we're going to be doing some science experiments using some things that you should have around your home. Now you may already have had the kit list, but if you haven't, the things that you will need are a bowl of water. It doesn't matter how big the bowl is, it can be small like mine or it can be big, and it doesn't matter what colour it is. Some sticky tape, some scissors, some paper, any size, and it can be scrap paper, some felt tip pens. You don't need as many as me, just a few will be absolutely fine, 2 or 3, and either some kitchen roll or a few sheets of toilet roll. So hopefully you've got all of those things. If you haven't, then you can pause the video and go and get those things and then come back once you've got them. So our first experiment is going to be something called chromatography. And that's where we split the ink inside pens into all the colours that you can find inside them. So, for example, when this green pen was made in the pen factory, maybe the people that made it put blue in it and yellow, perhaps, because those two things make green. Or maybe they put some other colours in there too to adjust the shade. We don't actually know. So what we need to do is this chromatography experiment, and we can find out the secrets of the people that made these pens. So I want you to start by getting a sheet of your kitchen roll or toilet roll and your darkest pen. So for me, my darkest felt tip pen is black. It's really important that you make sure you're not using a permanent marker, because permanent markers don't work for this. It needs to be a felt tip pen like this. Hopefully you've got one around. Next, you're going to turn your kitchen roll into a strip of kitchen roll. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold it in half, and then fold it again, and then fold it again. And it makes a nice long thin strip like this. You don't have to fold it precisely, it doesn't have to be accurate, and don't worry too much about it being neat. If you're using toilet roll, if you didn't have any kitchen roll at home, then you can just fold it a few times and it'll be a smaller strip. But as long as we've got this shape, that's absolutely fine. Then what I want you to do is to take your pen and draw a dot near the bottom of the kitchen roll, but not right at the bottom. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just going to give you a moment to do that. It's just a dot. And again, it doesn't matter about being neat. Okay, now once you've done that, you need to get your bowl of water. I'm going to lift mine up so that you can see it, but you can leave yours on the table if it's heavy. And you need to put the bottom of the kitchen roll into the water. Now we're trying not to let that dot go into the water, so just the bottom, like this. If your bowl is really, really deep, you might have to make sure it doesn't go to the bottom so that that dot doesn't end up under the water, or else it doesn't work quite so well. And then all we need to do is wait. And the water is going to start to move up the kitchen roll, and when it gets to our dot, it's going to keep going, and it's going to take the colours with it. But some colours are heavier than others. So the heavy colours are going to stay down near the bottom, and the lighter colours, so that's not the way they look that's light, but the ones that don't weigh as much, are going to move up to the top of the piece of kitchen roll or toilet roll. And so we should start to see our dot splitting into all sorts of other colours. I'm just going to let mine go up a little bit longer, and yours will probably take a little bit of time. And remember, you can have it on the table. It's just that if I put mine down on the table, you can't see it very well. But you don't need to lift it up in the air. So I'm starting to see some bright blue in there, a little bit of pink, and a little bit of purple. I'll lift it back up again so everybody can see it. Hopefully you can see my colours, particularly that blue that's at the top. and then down in the bottom is the pinky purple. If we leave it for even longer, it will split up into even more colours, and eventually we should see a few different colours hidden inside that pen. Now you might have found that your darkest pen was a black like mine, but your black might have different colours inside it if it's been made in a different factory. So there are actually lots of different combinations that mix together to make black. So my pen was made out of pink, purple and blue so far, but yours might have been yellow, green, orange, all sorts of different colours. As long as there's enough of them and there's enough dark colours in there, they'll eventually mix together to make black. I've got some really light blue at the top now. Hopefully you can see that. So hopefully yours is starting to look a little bit like mine. Sometimes, occasionally, you might find that there aren't very many colours hidden inside your pen, particularly if you used a really light colour, like yellow or light pink. Those colours tend not to have quite so much hidden inside them. So if you found this experiment hasn't worked quite so well for you, and you haven't got lots of different colours, then you could always try a different pen later. We're going to leave that one for now, and try a different chromatography experiment. So you'll need this time another sheet of kitchen roll or toilet roll and a few more pens, so the rest of your felt tip pens. This time we're going to fold the kitchen roll into a square. It is already a square, so we could leave it like this, but it's quite big, so I want it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to fold it one way and then fold it the other way. Remember, it doesn't matter if it's not very neat, because it's just to do the experiment on. This will make something that makes quite a cool picture, so you might decide that later on you want to try it again and make it really neat and make a picture that you could keep. But for now, we're just experimenting and trying to find things out. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take some more of our pens, and this time we're going to draw a pattern on the kitchen roll. So I'm going to do it down on the table and then I'll hold it up to show you. I'm doing a big splodge of pink in the middle, and then I'm going to do some black lines around it, and then I think I'll use some green. I'm going to do some green spikes. And the pattern is just whatever you want to do. You don't have to copy mine. You can do anything you like. That's mine there. So I'm going to carry on adding to my pattern. And if you start doing your pattern, if you haven't already, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to draw your pattern. So it's not loads and loads of time. Don't worry about it being perfect, because we're going to change it when we do the experiment anyway. Just do a few different colours and try and make sure you leave some spaces between the colours. We're going to do some chromatography, just like we did just now, so we need some space for the colours to split into all the inks that are inside the pens. So leave some gaps between your colours. You've had around 30 seconds of decorating time, so there's about 1.5 minutes left. This is what mine looks like now. I haven't worried too much about making it neat. Yours might be a bit neater than mine, or it might not be, and that's absolutely fine, it doesn't matter. That's about 1 minute now, so 1 more minute to do your decorating. If you've finished, you can just wait for a moment, and then we're going to do the chromatography experiment. Okay, you've got 30 seconds left, so try finishing off your pattern. Okay, so hopefully everybody has drawn their pattern on their piece of paper, like this. So now what we're going to do is similar to what we did in this experiment, but instead of dangling it in the water and the water moving up, we're going to put water in the middle of the square and the water is going to move outwards. This wouldn't work with a normal piece of paper because it doesn't soak up water. We need something like toilet paper or kitchen roll because that's made to soak up water, so the water can move through it really easily. The way that we're going to do this, I'll just move my camera down so that you can see a bit better. Hopefully you can see my picture on my bowl there. I'm going to put my finger in the water so it gets nice and wet, and then I'm going to just touch the middle of my piece of kitchen roll. You might be able to see it's started to spread out. That pink has started to spread out. I need to touch it a few more times. So I'm just putting lots of water, not too much, but just enough that it moves out. And you can kind of see when you need some more because the water stops moving. So you put it on, it moves outwards, and once it stops, you can put some more on. And you're just working from the inside outwards so that those colours all start to spread outwards. And hopefully you should be seeing that some of your pens have got some other shades and some other colours hidden inside them. I'll pop the camera back up again, and then I can hold mine up to show you. And that's what it looks like. It looks kind of like a tie-dye picture. All those different shades. You can see my black had loads hidden inside it again. The green had lots of shades of green, and the purple is similar as well. So sometimes you'll get some really random colours, like blacks and browns tend to have all sorts of colours hidden inside them. And then things like green and blue, they tend to be a bit more like shades of green and shades of blue hidden inside. Yours might look even cooler than mine, with loads more colours on it. You might find that it's quite fragile at the moment, which means if you pick it up while it's wet, it could break. If your picture has broken, don't worry too much because you know how to make one of these again now, so you can make another chromatography picture. If you want to help it to not break, then don't move it around too much whilst it's wet, because when it's wet, it's a lot more delicate. If you leave it and let it dry, it gets a lot stronger again, and it will be a lot less likely to break. So I'm going to leave this one. This is mine. I'll hold it to the camera so everybody can see all those shades. I'm going to leave it to the side to dry. I'm just going to give everybody 1 minute to finish off doing that experiment, and then we're going to go on to our next experiment. Okay, hopefully everybody's finished that experiment and popped it to the side. And now we're going to do something else. So this is called the opening flower experiment. And we're going to make a picture of a flower with petals, and we're going to make it open all on its own. It's the same way that real flowers open, is they suck up water through their stems, which helps the flower's petals to open up when it's time to open. So we're going to be making a paper flower. So we're going to take some paper, our scrap paper, and on the paper, just use one of your pens. You can use one of your felt tip pens from earlier. Just draw a flower. Mine's going to have 4 petals. I'd say it needs to have anywhere between 3 and 5 petals and not be too small. I'll show you what I mean if I just draw mine quickly. Then you can see. So that's how mine is. You can see how big it is compared to my sheet of paper. So if you started drawing yours and it's a lot smaller than that, try again drawing one that's a bit bigger. I know it might not look much like a flower, but these are the 4 petals. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 petals. Yours might look a little bit more like a flower. You can do this experiment with more petals, but it is a little bit more difficult. So if you've drawn some more petals than 4, that's absolutely fine, but it might be a little bit harder. And remember, not too small. Once you've drawn your flower, the next step is to cut it out. So I'm just going to cut mine out. And don't panic if you're a little bit behind me. I know I did that quite quickly. I'll give everybody a moment once I've cut it out to have a bit of time, just in case you haven't finished that bit. So this is my flower. You'll notice it's not very neat, and that's okay. You might want to make yours a little bit neater than my one, but you don't have to if you don't want to. One thing that's important is that I've cut out the individual petals. Sometimes people do this experiment and they just draw a flower and then just cut a circle around the flower. That won't work, because in a minute we're going to be folding these petals in, and it's not going to work if you've just got a circle. So do try and make sure you cut out the individual petals, but don't worry too much about it being really, really neat. So if you find cutting a little bit tricky, that's absolutely fine. Mine's not very neat either. I've missed a bit of the lines and some of the corners, and that doesn't matter. The important bit is just having a shape like this. I'll just give everybody a little bit of time, because I know that some people might take a little bit longer to cut than others. If you have already cut yours out, and you've got your felt tip pens around, then what you can do is you can decorate it if you like, and make it look a little bit more like a flower. I'm going to draw just the middle of my flower. And I think that's going to really help it to look like a flower. You don't have to decorate it, but if you have done this bit and you're just waiting, then you can decorate your flower whilst you wait. Don't worry too much about it being absolutely perfect, because it is going to go into water for this experiment, and it's going to be quite soggy afterwards, so you probably won't be able to keep it. So it's just for doing the experiment. So I've just done this. I think it looks a bit like an egg now. I've just popped the middle of the flower in. Okay, hopefully everybody's at least got to the point where they've made a flower and then cut it out. So now we're going to do the folding. I'll do it nice and slowly, because this is probably the trickiest part of what we're going to do for this experiment. So we're going to take the petals and we're going to fold them into the middle like this. So hopefully that yellow helps you to see. So I fold one and I really push it down. And then I'm going to turn it and fold another one in. And then I fold another one in. And then the last one. So for me, that's 4 petals that I folded into the middle, and now it looks a little bit square because it's got 4 sides like a square. But for you, it might be 5 or 3, or you might even have done a few more petals. If you think you've done the wrong number, just try it, and if it doesn't work, you'll have all these things to do this experiment again at home, because you can just use scrap paper Any paper will work for this one. So once everybody's folded it, you need to hold it so that the petals are upwards, like this. I'll hold it really close to the camera so everybody can see. I'm going to hold it over the top, like that. And then I'm going to pick up my water, just like before. You don't have to pick your water up, you can leave it on the table. I'm just picking it up to make it easier for you to see. You very gently put it as close to the water as you can without it getting wet, and then gently drop it so that it lands flat on the surface of the water. Hopefully you can see mine is floating. Now, it's really important that you don't wobble the bowl too much whilst doing this experiment. It's easiest if you have it down on the table to keep it nice and flat. Because if you wobble it, your flour might sink. Now, I don't know if anybody can see from there, so I'll move the camera down a little bit, and hopefully you can see a little bit. My petals are starting to open all by themselves. And what's happening is that the paper is gradually soaking up water, and as it soaks up water, it swells. It gets a little bit bigger. And the fact that it gets bigger makes it go from being squashed together like this to spreading out like this, like my hand is doing. So it's squashed together, it soaks up water, and that helps it to come out like this, just like a real flower does. Hopefully you could see my flower a little bit there. If I hold it up, you can see those petals are sticking straight up in the air now. Now my bowl is a little bit too small for my flower to completely flatten out, but yours might be able to do it. Now sometimes this experiment doesn't work. So that might happen if either you jog this a little bit too much, or maybe when you drop the flour on, if you don't get it quite flat enough, sometimes it can sink. One corner of it picks up water and sinks into the water. So if you found that this experiment hasn't worked for you, and your flour didn't open, don't worry, because you know how to do it now. So we'll still move on to the next experiment, but you can come back and do that another time. And if you try it a few times, I'm sure you'll find that eventually you'll be able to get it to work. Just really focus on not wobbling the water too much and on dropping the paper nice and flat. Also, if you accidentally do it upside down with the petals on the bottom, then that will mean that it might not work because the petals can't open up under the water. They have to be on the top. We'll put that one to the side now because hopefully that's worked for everybody, or it's almost finished working, and you can just keep an eye on it while we do the next experiment. And we're just going to finish off with a rocket. So for this, we'll need our paper. Don't worry that it's got a flower cut out of it. Our sticky tape, our scissors, and also a straw, if you've got one. If you haven't got a straw, don't worry. You can still do it, but it's easier with a straw, because we're going to be trying to make a rocket. So we're going to make the nose cone of the rocket, and then we're going to try and make it fly. So to start off with, you'll need a pen again. You're going to draw a semicircle on your piece of paper. It doesn't matter too much how big or small it is. If it's really small, it's going to be quite fiddly and quite difficult. If it's really big, it might be a bit heavy, so it might not fly very well. So just go for something around this size, but don't worry too much if you think yours is a bit bigger or a bit smaller, because maybe you'll find a size that works really, really well, and maybe you'll find out something that I don't know. You're going to cut your semicircle out as well. So I'm just going to cut mine, and again, we're not worrying too much about how neat we are, because it doesn't matter. It's just to do the experiment. So I've cut my semicircle out, and I'll just wait a moment for everybody to have done that. And after this is the trickiest part of all of our experiments. So I'm hoping everybody will be able to get it, but I'll show you it a few times just in case. You need to have a piece of sticky tape ready, about this much. I'll show you compared to my fingers. It's about that much, but it doesn't need to be too much. It doesn't matter. If you have a little bit more than me, that's fine. A little bit less than me, that's fine. We'll get it ready, and I'm just going to stick it on the side of the table so it's ready for me in a moment. Then, this is the bit that everybody needs to watch as carefully as they can. You take your semicircle, hold it upside down like a smile. You take one corner in one finger and thumb, the other corner in the other finger and thumb, and then you just bring your fingers together. So you touch them together like this. And you should notice, when you touch those corners together, it kind of makes a cone shape. Mine's not very much like a cone, because my semicircle is a bit tall. Yours might be more like a cone than mine, or maybe even less like a cone than mine, but it's kind of like a cone. You can see the bottom here, and the pointy bit here. If I push it down a bit more, it's pointy there. I'm going to use a little bit of sticky tape to stick that together. But just before I do, I'll show you one more time. You take finger and thumb, and stick them together like this. And then use a little bit of sticky tape to tape that side. And you'll notice it looks a bit like this. So this is my cone. And cones are really good shapes for flying through the air because they've got a pointy front. So this pointy bit here is able to cut through the air and help this to fly. We call it aerodynamic when something's really good at flying. If you threw it this way, towards this bit, it doesn't fly very well. But if you fly it this way, towards the point, it flies really well. Once you've done that, the last thing is to use your straw if you've got one. Put your straw in here, blow through it, and it should fly. Now, if you don't have a straw, then you can just throw it, or you can try putting it on your mouth and blowing like this. And hopefully you can do it that way. But if you have got a straw, it makes it a bit easier, and you can point it in lots and lots of different directions. Now, that was our last experiment. So hopefully everybody's had lots of fun. There might still be some parts of the experiment that you want to try again yourselves, or that you haven't had a chance to finish. So hopefully you can go away, finish those, maybe try some more chromatography pictures, or some more opening flowers. Maybe you could find out if a big flower with lots of petals works better, or if a small flower, a really fiddly one, you could give that one a go. So thank you very much for joining in the science session, and I'll say goodbye, and I hope you have lots of fun doing even more science at home.